Okay, welcome to another episode of The Accidental Entrepreneur. We have a special guest today who shares my first name, so that's one of the reasons why he's on the show. All the Mitchells have to come on to the podcast. That's one of the rules. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast directory, be sure to leave us a 5-star review if you can. If you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe to the feed and hit that like button so we can keep bringing you valuable conversations like the one we're going to have today. So I want to welcome Mitchell Levy from Credibility Nation. He's got a great first name. I told them when we first met, right, Mitch, that he likes Mitchell and I like Mitch, which works out really well. But you got to get all the Mitchells to come on the podcast. I got another Mitchell I'm chasing.
That's a great. It's a great way to start searching for people. Actually, at one point in time, I was thinking, how cool would it be to have a clubhouse room of all Mitchells or a clubhouse room of all Levy's? Like,
I wonder how many we could get. Like Levy's, we could fill the room. I'm not sure how many Mitchells we got to get. We, let's see,
there are quite a few actually.
Yeah. All right. So Mitchell, thanks for coming on today. I was telling you before, maybe we can go back, like, your background and your training and maybe even where you grew up, and then we can work all the way up to credibility, because I think that's a missing piece that we talked about for business owners. How to build credibility. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. This will, this is fun. And by the way, for the audience, I'm going to give you a word, Mitch. You could use it going forward if you want.
Okay.
I often say one of the words that came out, just for people to know, I've actually interviewed over 500 thought leaders on credibility. I did 500 to come up with a book, the 28th most popular TEDx in 2021. And one of the words that came out of it, it's pretty cool. One of the words that came out of it is cred dust.
Cred dust?
Cred dust is the magic that happens when you share somebody else's ideas, thoughts, and actions. So, and Mitch said, click on the like button. I'm going to say, write the aha moment that if you listen to the last podcast, write a comment with the aha moment you got.
I got to put that in the show
share
notes.
with your friends.
Write that down. Cred dust.
Basically, spread some of Mitch's cred dust.
There we go. Cred. Is that 2 words or 1 word?
That's, by the way, that's exactly.
If it's 1 word, does it have 2 D's or does it have 1 D?
Exactly. It's I do it as 1 D. If you actually Googled cred dust, CREDUST, it'll bring you to creddust.com. And I want it to be a word in the dictionary. So I created what looks like a dictionary page. It has a video.
So you created, you own the domain, Cred Dust?
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. Okay, good. All right. Well, so let's go back in your life to the cabin you grew up in the Midwest, and we'll tell us the whole story. And then we got some other terms I know we're going to get into also.
So cabin in the Midwest, not exactly. So actually born on the East Coast, born in New York, raised in Jersey.
There you go.
And
what town were you raised in?
That last town, I was in a couple: East Brunswick, Englishtown, Lakewood.
Okay. Yeah, there you go.
And I sort of, when I'm thinking about credibility, and I was trying to reconstruct my life, probably for the first time I was doing a TEDx is when people encourage you to go back and think about where did things come from.
Very right.
My parents were divorced when I was 9.
Okay.
And dad was, for a long time, I called him bio dad or just by his first name.
Okay.
And then because what he did was, and many divorced parents did at that time is, he'd come out like maybe a weekend or a weekend a month, and then he would do what he thought dads did with their kids and, take them bowling or take them to movies. And and I think that's when I first started thinking about integrity. Like that is like, what is it, just from the perspective is what is supposed to be a dad? I'm not sure. Right. And then I'm going to fast forward to after B school. So I ended up getting a undergraduate degree at the University of Miami. By the way, I like saying the name of the degree only because it has so many syllables in it. So I got a BS in stochastic and operation. Sorry, wow. I can't even get it right.
Mouthful.
Stochastic and deterministic models of operational research.
Wow.
It is a mouthful.
That is.
When I summarize it, and this is one of those things that every parent wants for their kid.
Right.
It's actually a degree I use my entire life. If I'm going to shorten it, I was taught how to model people and systems. and to improve it.
Okay.
And so it was,
Why don't they just say that? Why all the big words?
I know, exactly.
Academicians. That's what I want to sound important.
And so I've actually used that my entire life. For instance, when I did this survey, terms that people talk about, is it statistically significant? Are you looking at the right numbers? Can you stand up to a group of academics looking at it? Now, I didn't need to actually go out and do research on what to do. I just sort of pulled it together. And this is a number of years since my undergrad.
Right. Well,
So
what does stochastic mean then?
Oh, now you're asking me good questions.
I got to look this up while you're talking then.
Yeah, actually, I need to look it up in the dictionary so I get it right. So here's the cool part. I'm sitting at my desk.
Yeah.
And I can actually type in the meaning of stochastic as we're talking.
Yeah.
So stochastic, because I didn't want to get it wrong, right? So
yeah,
it's randomly determined. So having a random probability distribution. And so deterministic is the other. So it's basically things that happen by random and things that happen on a consistent basis.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So yeah, once again, there might have been.
Do they still have the major at University of Miami?
That's a great question.
Yeah, I wonder.
Well,
maybe it evolved into something else and it's called.
I love that question. And because it opens up something I never really talk about. So when I first got there, I went for a international finance and marketing degree.
Okay.
And in the first semester, and by the way, I think I'm going to say I woke up somewhere in college. I probably slept.
A lot of us do, I think. Yeah.
I slept for most of my life before that. and the first semester it seemed so practical. It seemed so easy that I went to the guidance counselor and said, what is the hardest thing I could do? I decided that
I didn't feel challenged. Is that
I didn't feel challenged enough. What is the hardest thing hardest degree I could take? And then can't remember, undergraduate class in the business school might have been 3,000 or 4,000 people. And I go, what's the hardest degree? And they said, well, the industrial engineering group partners with us and they run this degree. And that's where, stochastic and deterministic models of operational research is. So you can still get a business degree, but you could take it through this particular group. And I said, okay, I did that. And there were 4 people of the, 3,000 to 4,000 people in the business school. There were 4 people who were taking that major that were in my class.
Right. So a much smaller group. Yeah.
So I went from there to College of William and Mary.
Okay.
And
is William and Mary the one at Williamsburg?
It's Williamsburg. Beautiful, beautiful location.
Yeah.
At the time, it was one thing that was difficult for me. So Miami's this melting pot, right? And it's all diverse and it's still considered a party school. You can,
big time,
like anything you do in life, you could decide to go on the extreme or you party all the time, or for me, party when I want. But what ended up happening my first semester is I met these 2 really gorgeous women, and what they did on Friday night is go to the library. And that just got me in the right habit of.
Okay, well, you met the right women then.
I met the right women.
Right.
And I, that's the only thing I wish from a social media perspective, social media was back then so I could reconnect and think. Right.
Yeah. Right. Well, if there was social media, then all the parties would be online. You get in trouble. So you wouldn't, but all of your friends probably would have been.
That's it's you never know.
That hasn't changed. I mean, University of Miami is a great school, but there's plenty of partying going on in South Miami.
It's a great school. So the thing is, I was really I was part of I played on the academic side. I played ultimate frisbee. I was very well rounded, and it's not difficult to have a lot of friends and if you consider yourself popular, it's not difficult to be popular when you're at a school like University of Miami. Yeah. So here I am. I then go to Williamsburg, beautiful school on the outside. Right. And at the time,
tiny, right?
It's smaller, and 2 things. I'm entering the business school, so it's not undergrad.
Right. So you're graduate.
Second, one of the things that I didn't realize when I got there is at the time, and maybe this is or isn't true today, you typically, for the most of the people, you either had to have been born a Virginian or make a decision that you want to stay in Virginia. And if you're not, you're one of those shunned people that's just
outcast.
coming in and out of school. And
Yeah, what are
so
you doing here?
I was the opposite of popular.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you wanted to be dressed like a colonial person, it's probably a perfect place because it's literally across the street, right? Doesn't the campus end on a street and then Colonial Williamsburg is across the street?
Literally.
Yeah, I remember.
It's amazing. And
Yeah.
so it was just it was a very interesting.
But you were there for the graduate program. You'd think that they would be more, accepting of the graduate students who were, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know. Maybe it was me. Maybe maybe it was lucky.
Right.
Whatever it was a different vibe, which gave me great comparison of
things Virginia I liked, itself things I did. Is not Miami, right?
And then what happened is I ended up doing a research study and getting something done in a way that I ended up following the person I was doing with, one of the professors, to Boston. And it unfortunately turned out to be my first boss out of business school was hedonistic and narcissistic. And I got taught I got taught all these lessons of how to live life in a way that wasn't really good for me.
Yeah, hedonistic is definitely, if you ever been to hedonism in Jamaica, it's not like,
I have not gone. Yeah, no, it's not. Yeah. What happened is we are taught so many things in terms of how to live, how to work. There, many of the academic institutions, the current style is still based on the industrial age.
Yeah, no, we teach like it's 1945, right?
Yeah, it's a command and control society, and the boss is the big cheese, and the boss speaks and everyone follows. And so I was taught these rules as this is the way it's supposed to be. This is what, and what I realized is that I was only with him for a year.
This was after business school, your first
This
job?
is after business school. It's my first male mentor. So I really didn't have, my mom, when she got remarried, married an amazing man who I call dad, and he died a couple of years ago. And he was amazing, but didn't want to do the male mentor thing. Right. So it was really my first male mentor.
Yeah.
Was somebody who taught me a bunch of dubious lessons. I call dubious the opposite.
Well, you missed him in college, right? Because you met those women who were more active.
Yeah. And so I was with him for a year. He was with me for 36.
Oh, wow. Okay. So let me ask you a question. I want to go back a little bit because I'm always curious about the path that people run. How did you go from University of Miami, right? 30,000 kids, big school, South Florida, fun, sun, all that stuff, to William and Mary Business School in Virginia? Like, where did that come about?
So it's a great story. I'm so glad you asked.
Good question, right? I was like,
I don't get to talk about it on that often.
Yeah.
So after college, I went to Europe for 2.5 months. Bought a Euro pass. Bought a Euro pass, saw 16 countries. It was just an amazing experience.
Nice.
I had applied to, at least from what I remember, I had applied to 2 institutions for B school. Okay. I applied to William and Mary, not sure why. Okay. I really can't tell you why.
There's the answer. We don't know.
Yeah, I applied to the University of Miami, and University of Miami, because I went there as an undergrad, was a 1 year, but a full fellowship. I had to work for it, but a 1 year program. And I think I worked for it, and they were paying half the tuition.
Okay.
So here I am. I come back from
That's the program at Miami, or
that's the program at Miami.
Okay.
And so I come back from my Europe trip, and mom, now she'll never say this happened, but while I was in Europe, she never told me. Although remember, this is the time where you get on a telephone call and it's like $5 every 30 seconds or something, right? So we didn't talk much. she didn't tell me that I was actually accepted into the College of William and Mary with a half tuition fellowship.
Oh,
And
that was
and
the
so
fellowship. Okay.
so that came. Oh, well, I had a actually fellowship scholarship. I think I at the Miami was a fellowship that meant I had to work at William and Mary was a scholarship, so it's a half tuition scholarship.
Got it.
And
But you can't for the life of you remember why you applied to William and
I
Mary. I mean, there's
can't tell
hundreds of
you.
thousands of business schools in the country. You weren't from Virginia.
Yeah,
Your mom wasn't living in Virginia.
I,
You don't
yeah,
know.
that's a great
That's funny.
question.
That's funny.
I can't tell you if I know that answer. Um, it's a good school. It's the second oldest school in the country.
Right.
But I don't know why. So what
Okay.
happened is I thought the half tuition thing was already expired. And as I drove down to Miami at the time, my folks were in Philadelphia. So as I drove down to Miami, I stopped at William and Mary. It's a beautiful campus.
And you
I
thought
mean,
you missed the deadline for this thing.
oh, the deadline was way past gone,
it
but
was
I
past. Okay.
I drove past. And I go, wow, this is really cool.
Yeah.
And so then we
Pretty
continued.
place. Yeah.
We continued going to the University of Miami. I checked into the dorms, and the next day I called the dean from William and Mary, and I told him, listen, I was in Europe for the summer. I didn't know if if I completely missed the deadline. I just didn't know anything about
Right.
it.
It wasn't like you get email when you're in Europe in those days. We didn't, right? I mean, you
Yeah,
were
no, yeah,
Mikado.
exactly.
Right.
And so I said, is the half tuition scholarship still open? And he says, I'll give me a minute. And he went away and came back. He says, not only is it open, but I'd like to make it a full tuition scholarship. I know that's exactly. I'm like,
You're like, is
and
this
now,
candid camera?
yeah, this is, and I was like, wow, that's, and so I'm immediately going, wow. I mean, it wasn't. I think I was just checking up just to verify because I didn't
Right.
want the loose end. And when he said that, it kind of shocked me. And then I said, so instead of saying, "Oh my God, this is amazing, count me in,"
Right. I'm in.
I
Where do I
said,
sign? Right. Quick before you change your
oh,
mind.
it was worse. I said, your program is 2 years, and I only have a year at Miami. Is there anything you could do about that? And he says, well, I could take a semester off.
Meaning he could, but you'd have to take more classes. But
So it'd
so
be
it's the same
no,
classes,
it
just shorter
it
time.
turned out he gave me credit for
Stuff
one of
you
the
took in
semesters.
Miami?
So
Okay.
so it was a year and a half versus 2 years to
Well,
get.
it costs him
go through the
less
program.
too, because so if he gives
Yeah,
me a
yes,
full scholarship, it's going to cost him less. It's not like you're paying for it; he's losing
hadn't
half
thought
a year
about that.
tuition. Yeah.
That's a great.
Yeah.
That's
So it
a
looks like
great
the
thought.
two women that you met who like to go to the library a lot. That was a good move.
I would absolutely want to thank those amazing women. And
Yeah. Because you
and
didn't get the scholarship because you did poorly at Miami, obviously.
in Miami, I ended up in that first semester. I was sort of a C, D student in high school, and my first semester in Miami, I got two Bs and the rest As. The second semester, I got 1 B and the rest As, and then the rest of my college career, I got all As.
Yeah. So how did you couldn't do that today? You couldn't be a C student in high school and get into University of Miami. You couldn't do it. I couldn't. I went to
Lucky.
Cornell. I wouldn't get to Cornell today. My grade. No way. Just no way. So competitive now.
Got lucky, maybe, or whatever it was. The
Yeah.
stars aligned to
Yeah,
bring
it
me
all
on the
came
path
together.
I'm at now. Yeah,
Crazy.
yeah.
So you were checking in the door in Miami. What'd you do? Turn around, pack your stuff, and get in the car and leave?
I once I made the decision to be yes, then the answer is yes.
left.
I told Miami what I was doing and where I was going, and then drove to College of William and Mary. Or actually, I might have. I'm thinking I flew,
Oh.
but it's so long ago I can't remember.
Yeah, of course.
Uh,
But I'm sorry, I'm making you reach back in the archives. Okay, so now let me bring us back up to where we were. So you met this guy through William and Mary, right? It was your first job, and obviously you stayed in touch with him for the rest of your life, is what you're saying, right? Even though you only worked for him for a year.
so I know sometimes they say that. No, the opposite.
Okay.
I was actually as a boss, he's the boss that we all don't like, you know, command and control, all about him.
Right.
What it really caused me to do is not be a good project manager or a team player. I mean,
Got it.
if I cracked the whip, that was the way it was supposed to work, not, you know, it was it wasn't the love approach to doing things successfully. It was the stick approach to doing
Right.
things
Got
successfully.
it.
And that was common accepted. So that
In
both
those
happened to
days,
me
yeah.
and was encouraged for me to do the people work that worked for me. So what I say is I was physically only with him for 1 year.
Right.
He was mentally with me for 36 years.
You had to break away from that. So was that a lot of therapy?
No, it's fascinating. For my first 13 years when I was in corporate, what happened is, and I don't like admitting this as it sounds really bad. I have to say I wasn't authentic,
Okay.
because I always think
No,
I
that's
was authentic.
honest, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I always thought I was authentic. However, as soon as I tell you this, you're going,
Yeah.
yeah,
Looking
Mitchell, you
back
weren't
now,
authentic.
right? Yeah.
What happened is when anyone would ask me a question,
Yeah.
all through my corporate career, my answer was always what I thought my boss wanted to hear. It wasn't just so I had an opinion, and then I'd go, well, what would my boss want to hear? Okay, let me make sure I say the stuff that he'd be happy with,
Right.
because that's what I was taught. And it wasn't until I became an entrepreneur in 1997 that Mitch, my first prospect, or my first client, I was sitting in front of the first client, and it turns out in 1997, I did SEO for 5 clients.
Yeah.
And
What kind of SEO was there in 1997?
oh, it was easy. Well,
Yeah, right. Exactly.
what ended up happening in 97 is one of my old bosses, I went to him and said, listen, I'm looking for something to do. I put up my hat as an e-commerce strategic consultant, and he goes, do you want to do SEO? He goes, I got all these clients. I've got this business. I don't want any of my team members doing it. I know you can figure it out.
So there was no Google, I think, in 1997, was there?
There was no
Yahoo, probably.
Yeah, those Yahoo was there. I think Google was sort of coming around. And what happened is I took 2 weeks. Entrepreneur, had an opportunity for the first paid gig once I started my own company. And this is the lesson here, by the way, is when opportunity knocks, say yes.
Right.
So I'm thinking SEO was below me. Why would I want to do SEO? And it was one of my old bosses at Sun. I was at Sun Microsystem. One of my old bosses, love this guy. I'm like, okay, if you think I should do it, sure. He goes, Mitchell, why don't you spend 2 weeks, figure out everything you need to know about SEO, which, by the way, wasn't that hard in 1997.
Right.
Figure out everything you need to know and tell me what you're going to charge me and what I should charge the clients.
Right.
And so I bought everything on the marketplace. I learned everything I could. And I ended up going back to Rick McGreedy was the guy's name. I went back to Rick and I said, I'm going to charge you $10,000 and you should charge your clients 15. He said, okay. And we immediately sold 5 clients.
So you were like a subcontractor to them. He was at Sun, you said?
He was, at the time, he had left Sun and had his own web presence company.
Isn't that where Sun was the original creator of JavaScript, right? Wasn't it?
Sun was the creator of Java, and they helped take their version of Unix, which is universally being used, around the planet.
Sure.
And what happened is, when I would go in order to do SEO at the time, you would ask the client you're working with, you'd say, okay, what is your 30-second elevator pitch? And in that 30 seconds, they would typically mention 2 or 3 key phrases. And what you want to do is have separate web pages focus on that key phrase, so the search engines could see that you had expertise in that key phrase.
Right. It was easy in those days.
So Mitch, I ended up asking all 5 clients for their 30-second pitch. All 5 took 10 minutes to answer their 30-second pitch. And I go, I think I have some strategic consulting opportunity here too. 2 of them became strategic consulting clients.
Got it. Yeah, because 30 seconds is not 10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Now, here's what's really interesting. That first person I asked we got into a great conversation. He showed me his web design, what they're going to be doing, the strategy. And then he says, what do you think? And so here I am I'm on my own. I'm my own boss, right? So I didn't have to worry about what the boss thought. And
Right.
I didn't literally cross my arms, but I feel like I crossed my arms. I feel like I stepped back and I said, I think what you just told me sucks. And
Really?
and instead of taking out the whip and saying you're fired immediately, because I work for myself, so it didn't matter if I got fired, right?
Right. You're just going to look for new
He
clients.
leaned in and said, God, nobody ever talks to me like that. Tell me more. And then I explained why I didn't like what he was doing. It was marketing cookie cutter approach that just didn't make him stand out from anyone else. And I just didn't like it. And that was my first breakaway from, so it was, you asked whether or not I got therapy. That was my first break. And I thought I was done. Mitch, I thought I was actually done. I thought, hey, I now am no longer thinking about what my boss thinks. I'm being me. And what ended up, I'm going to fast forward now.
Yeah.
My first TED Talk was, if you take a look at the book, Being Seen and Being Heard as a Thought Leader. That one got me on a trajectory that was amazing. The second one was after I interviewed the 500 thought leaders on credibility. It's called We Are Losing Our Humanity, and I'm tired of watching it happen. And I was practicing for that during COVID. And so what I ended up doing is I ended up creating 30 Zoom calls, like we're doing now, 30 Zoom calls where people would give me feedback based on the talk. And the 10th reviewer said something that, and this is now 36 years after my first boss out of college, the first reviewer said the 10th reviewer said something that caused me to realize I was still holding on to that first guy. And what he said was, this is a guy named Ted Lau. What Ted says was, Mitchell, do you realize that the people who you run into life who are doing dubious things, they are innocent? Because that's what they were taught by others, and others before them taught.
Learned
right?
behavior.
Because it's a learned behavior. It's common practice. And a result, people do it, even though it's not what mom and grandma said you should do. That's credible when you were young.
Right.
Right.
But they're perpetuating this.
They're perpetuating. I call it cookie cutter marketing approaches.
Yeah, there's a lot of those.
And as a lawyer, you often run across these things that you just look at and go, why did they think that was okay? And they say, well, because everyone's doing it.
Yeah, right. That
doesn't mean it's okay. But
no,
right.
it's just, well, that's what everyone does. Well, what does that mean?
Exactly.
Yeah, I was got a question.
And so when Ted did that, I sort of look back and go, oh, maybe, well, actually, I don't think maybe was there. This guy who taught me all these bad lessons, he's innocent, because that's what he was taught. And he just taught me what he learned. And so the last lesson I learned 36 years after this guy was just purely forgiveness. Just like,
Interesting.
I forgive you.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's wasn't your fault.
Was exactly.
You were taught wrong and you didn't know. And luckily you realized it. He didn't.
I don't know, because I definitely did not stay in touch with him.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, you take me through it. So you, like, where did the credibility stuff come from? Was it kind of a recognition of the things that you saw and how people would carry themselves and things like that?
Let me share with you, as an entrepreneur, I call myself a parallel entrepreneur.
Okay.
And so it means I have multiple businesses going at the same time, much more commonplace these days when you look at, some of the big, the Elon Musks of the world,
Right.
See the stuff that
I've heard the term portfolio entrepreneur. Where you have a
that's
portfolio.
interesting.
Yeah. I heard that term. Somebody used that.
That's an interesting term.
Yeah.
There's an implication there. So I'll have to give that some thought. But Mitch, thanks for sharing that with me.
No problem.
So I'll spend less than 60 seconds, but I'll give you a small snapshot of things I've done. I've been in Silicon Valley for 35 years. Okay. I've created 20 professional services firms. and businesses since then. I've sat on the board of a NASDAQ company for 9 years. I've run 4 different executive business programs at Silicon Valley universities.
Okay.
I've run 4 CEO networking groups for a decade. And I still have a book publishing company where we've published over 750 books.
Of not just your books, people's books.
I've written 65 myself. I've
That's a lot.
published 750.
I'm working on my
books
first.
in total.
Okay. So other entrepreneurs, business books.
Yes, typically nonfiction books where the author's using the book to drive more business.
Yeah, right. Makes
So
sense.
the way I think about it, this concept called a CPOP, it's business professionals wanting book credibility.
Right.
That's the right prospect for me. And actually that's what got me into credibility is when I did my first TEDx, what I liked about the TEDx concept, it's an idea we're sharing, not a marketing idea we're sharing. Because my cookie cutter approach in life was everything was a marketing idea, right? Everything had to have some form of marketing in it, right? So
everything's got to be an lead to something else.
Exactly. So,
right.
So when I finished the TEDx, or maybe somewhere in the middle, I actually realized that I didn't like the clients I was currently attracting as a book publisher.
Oh,
we were more of a traditional publisher, traditional/hybrid, but we were attracting the people who would write their own books. And by the time 2017 came along, it wasn't the client I wanted to work with. I wanted to work with a client that was successful in business, had a thriving business, wanted the book, just didn't have any time.
Meaning you guys would write the book.
So we would write. And what I do now, so I built a writing school in 2018 for my writers. I ended up picking up 10 clients. And today it's the business professional who wants that book 6 months from today. We have co-created, published, distributed, made them an international best-selling author, and they spend 10 hours.
So that's the
current model.
That's the current. It's like a 6-month process.
It's a 6-month process, and they spend 10 hours. That's the most amazing part. So what was interesting is 2018, I was executing, making sure I could do it. 2019, I actually went to a branding camp. So I flew to one of my friends' location in Miami. We spent 2 days coming up with a brand for Mitchell Levy. And by the way, it's now something I do with people, and we do it sometimes in minutes. But that brand that came out was Global Credibility Expert.
Okay.
And I felt comfortable. I've been in Silicon Valley, started a bunch of companies, sat on the board. I felt very comfortable with the brand. But 2 months after wearing that brand, I woke up with a Napoleon Hill inspired moment. Huh. I woke up and said, I need to interview 500 thought leaders on credibility so I can have a book.
Napoleon Hill is Think and Grow Rich?
And Think and Grow Rich. Yep, exactly.
Okay.
And so between 2019 and 2020, by the way, imagine you're on my team and we have a team meeting. I woke up, I had a dream yesterday. and we're going to actually interview we're going to keep our publishing company moving forward. And in the next year, we're going to interview 500 people and put them on 2 different podcasts.
Okay. And make a book out of it too?
We ended up doing a book. I distribute the content on a podcast. That led to my second TEDx.
Okay.
And, but what it really led to, Mitch, is a transformation of a life purpose.
Okay.
So it's more than
kind of what do they call that? A paradigm shift in terms of how you would view it.
Yeah, it's significant aha moment, an epiphany, a complete paradigm shift. I thought my life purpose was create companies, get married, have children, have one. He's 24 and an amazing kid. Be able to have friends and family, make money, run businesses. I thought that felt like a really cool life purpose for me. And what came out of the interviews, what shocked me more than anything else,
right,
is out of the 500 people, 98% could not articulate who they served and how they served them in 10 words or less.
Yeah, that does not surprise me.
I know. Well, that's what by the way,
people think that they can do it, but when you really put them to the test, they can't do it. I mean, they just can't do it,
Yeah. So that's where it gets really fascinating to me. I I have a superpower, and that's to allow people, I call this a CPOP, your customer point of possibilities. So I have a CPOP and a methodology and approach, and I've now done this with over 1,000 people,
Okay, so you've tested
and
it.
it's super powerful. And I'm going to say, I believe what I do is teachable. So if I can teach other people on how they can help others have their CPOP, that means that we weren't taught to be able to wear our purpose on our sleeve and how to articulate it.
Now that's another acronym you know. C as in
C-
Charles POP.
CPOP.
And
So
it stands
customer
for
point of possibilities.
customer point of possibility. Okay.
Yeah. So if you actually go to creddust.com, or at one point in time, we may talk about crud.com.
Okay.
If we go to those locations, then you could click on some of the other words that I've defined. Yeah.
Okay. But CPOP is like your version of the elevator pitch
So can I say yes? I'm going to
sounds
do
like
the
it's a
yes,
little
but
bit
the
more than
big
that,
and.
right?
Well, what I'm for those who are, if you're an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
Or in a business or a business person, or for everyone you speak with, when you go to a networking event or you meet if somebody comes in, they're a prospect, they come in, you're going to say, who are you? Or what do you do? Okay. Now, first of all, they might take 5 or 10 minutes to explain it.
Right.
But second, the biggest mistake they make is what's bundled into the 30-second pitch or the value proposition. Is the first words out of their mouth is going to be I or we.
Right. I've been told that you shouldn't say it.
Right. Because when somebody says,
It's
what
gotta
do you
be
do?
about you, not about me.
Yeah. When somebody says, who are you? What do you do? Truthfully, they don't really care about you, at least not directly. They care about what you can do for them.
Right.
What you could do for them is either you could serve them in some way, you could support them, you could be a client, or you can be someone to recommend. Right.
Right.
Mitch, before we here, I asked you who's the client you're interested in, because if I run across somebody in New Jersey who's a business person who fits in the characteristics that, the 2 to 10 million that's looking for a lawyer on retainer, who I now know how I can recommend you. I that's what I was thinking about. And for me, that's gold, to be able to have the ability to recommend people who I actually trust, know, like, who will be credible. Right. So that's gold for me. So if I could teach other people how to articulate their CPOP, and what happens is that CPOP is, think about it as something that comes before your elevator pitch, before your value proposition. I'm not asking you to forget all the stuff you've been taught.
Right.
What I am asking you to do is to present something in the average human attention span that they're going to remember. Now, by the way, if you Google average human attention span, it's
very
8
short.
seconds,
Is that what it
8.25
is?
seconds.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Right.
In some
So-
cases, it got probably shorter in some cases, right?
Oh, for many.
Right.
I'm thinking about something that can take you 1 to 3 seconds.
Yeah.
So this concept of a CPOP is 10 words or less. It's
So
who
then
you
they're
serve.
more like subconsciously, oh, I want to hear more. Now they're open to listening to you. Because the problem with
Done.
elevator pitches, nobody listens.
That's exactly the case. Thank you for using the word subconsciously, because I really haven't in the conversations before. What I said is what you want to do is articulate the playground you're playing in so they can make a decision to opt in.
Right.
Opt in is
Yeah,
they're
which they
basically
don't do
saying, tell me more.
consciously. They don't say, oh, wow, Mitchell, I want to hear more. But in their mind, now they're open to it.
Yeah.
I love the term CPAP. Okay, that's going in the show notes too.
So
To trademark that.
mine is leaders living their values while driving operational credibility.
Okay. And you deal with a lot
Right.
of corporate people too, right?
And so that's a new, by the way, that's a new one as of yesterday. So here's the cool part. We could change our CPOP over time. And the reason for the operational credibility is the primary focus or recognition that in the corporate space, you have to speak the language they want to hear.
Right.
Right. And at the end of the day, though, it by the way, the one that was yesterday, leaders living their values and making a difference.
Hmm.
That one appeals to the entrepreneur, but doesn't appeal to corporate. So I'm
Right.
going to be, for me, I need to now share this with 20, 25 people, and we'll see which one they like better. But the
Right.
real value happens when you then subconsciously ask yourself, tell me more.
Right. Because then you're like, oh, I think he gets me. He's talking my language. Right.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, we're building credibility here, circling the wagons. Right. No, but I think it's so, this is why when you and I met, we started talking about it, because it's so important. I've been on, there's a friend of mine that I know who's got a business, and she does organization like basements for children, right? But on the side, so if you have a couple of kids and your basement is a freaking mess, she's called the Toy Tamer. She comes in a day, she takes videos, she's at a YouTube channel and literally transforms this room. But her goal in the room is not just to make it organized, but to set it up so the children will keep it organized. So, you know, things are set up so the children like to put things away, whatever. It's ingenious, but she's also very good at helping people to consolidate or make concise their elevator pitch. So she comes on Zoom calls and whatever, and will listen and be like, to me, Mitch, I have no idea what you just said. Like, and then help you boil it down and do that kind of stuff. And I think that one of the most frustrating things that I have for a lot of people is you go on, let's say, a networking meeting, let's say we're in person, right? And they say, listen, we got a lot of people here. We got, 30 seconds, just say who you are, what you do, real concise. We'll go to the next person. And there's always somebody who feels obligated to vomit in words all over the group for 3 minutes. And everybody's like looking at their watch, and they totally tune this person out. And now they're frustrated to even listen to more people, because they're already like, oh, they got that going on. And that's why I think like you totally lose credibility with the group, and you only had one opportunity to, I had you at hello, right? What was that thing from the movie?
Absolutely. If you think about imagine if you're in a group, we'll just say 20 people.
Okay.
What if 20 people were able to articulate I'm going to say CPOP, but we'll do the playground they play in, so you actually really understand that playground
and remember it.
And remember, because it's less than 10 words, right?
Exactly.
One of my examples I love is one of my friends. He's been in Silicon Valley for 30 years. He has helped thousands of companies with their startups. Guy by the name of Raji Sethi, and his CPOP, game changers looking for their secret sauce.
Yeah, perfect. People go,
if you're in a room with Raji
Sethi
and you're an entrepreneur, you're like, if he said that and stopped,
right,
you're going to make your way over to meet him at some point in time. Period.
Right, because it's not designed to tell you everything that he does. It's designed to say, what is that? Oh, I want to hear more. And I have this group on Fridays from London. It's like a Zoom call every other Friday. We have this thing called the 5-word challenge. I think we get it down to 3 words. So it goes around the room, and there's always somebody who says, and then the person who's facilitator interrupts and says, no, Mitchell, it's a 5-word challenge. You can say 5 words. Don't say anything more than that. And we'll go on, because none of us will remember more than 5 words about what you do. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's right. And that's a place. So it's one of those things I end up doing too when I'm at conferences or Zoom calls. A lot of times the host will have me join, and when somebody does their speaking, I'll share with them their CPOP. Right.
You'll create it for them, basically.
And I'll create it for them as I'm listening. I'll create it for them, share it, and then we'll have the audience vote on it.
Very good. I like that. Well, you have to force people to do it, because they think that they have to tell you everything that they do. They're certified in this, and by the way, I do that. I'm licensed to do this, and that somehow magically you're going to remember it. Forget about the 20 people in the room that you're listening to, all the other information that you get bombarded with for the rest of the day and weeks. And you're just not going to remember anything. So in our group, they were like, well, that's probably all you're going to remember anyway. So why should you say more than 5 words? It's like name that tune, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I love it. So I know it's a little off the topic. So how did you get on a TED Talk? Like, was that difficult to get, to do a TED Talk? Did you write the book and they're like, oh, we read your book, Mitchell, and we want you on TED? What happened? What was the process? Curious.
There's a site, there's a page on the TED site. So specifically, I've done 2 TEDx's so far,
Okay.
and there's a particular page. I'll get the URL for you.
Okay.
Where they list all the TEDx events that are upcoming.
Okay. And they're like satellite events, right? They're all over the world. Some of them are smaller, bigger, they're right.
A
And they always
lot of them,
videotape these things.
yeah, although really a lot of them are when they can go, they're going back to physical. The 2 that I've done were physical events.
Got it.
And
Meaning
so
where you
for
had an
those,
audience, a live audience.
so we had a live audience.
Yeah.
Now the second one was actually during COVID, so the live audience was just the other speakers. But there were
Oh,
20
I see. Okay.
speakers, right?
I
The first one,
Right. Meaning you were
first one had
recorded
about 100
live. You
people.
weren't on Zoom
Yeah.
or anything.
no, there's during COVID, the TED organization did allow a number of organizers to organize events where the actual speaking was done virtually.
Yeah.
And
Different vibe.
I think that
Different.
it's different vibe. It's not the right.
No, not for TED. No. Definitely
Yeah.
not. Yeah.
So for those that, by the way, the site's not coming up for me, but I'll give the URL. It's TED.com, TED.com/TEDx/events.
Okay.
And what it does, it'll list a little over 2,000 events.
Okay.
And what you want to do is you want to look for events that are in your area, click on the page, go to their location, and then many of them will have ask you to go on you could sign up to go on a email list, and they'll do a call for speakers, typically 6 months before the next event. And so you want to fill out the form.
And then you submit your topic or whatever.
And so you submit your topic, and I'll give you the hint. One of the things that they're going to be asking you is to be able to have a video clip of past speaking, because they want to see that you're a speaker. And for me, what I realized is we all have these speaker sizzle reels. And by the way, I don't necessarily consider those credible. So instead, I sat down in front of the computer and I spoke to the person who would be evaluating.
You created your own.
So I created my own. It was basically, at the time, it was, here's the talk. I've thought really long and hard and done work to know that 60% is really fine-tuned. The other 40%, as soon as you say yes, I'm going to start practicing and working with other people, and I'm going to make sure that what I deliver will be something that you'd be proud that you picked me as a speaker.
Okay.
And that actually is what got that person to say yes.
Right.
Because I was
saying you
speaking.
did a TED talk, obviously, is definitely a credibility grabber. Right?
It's definitely and then what I often say now, it was very funny. There's somebody who helps other people to get on the TEDx stages. She compiles a list every quarter of I think the 50 most popular TEDx's that actually, no, it's every year. She compiles a list once a year of the 50 most popular TEDx's that came out. And so for 2021, she ranked me as 28. Well, that's also a popular, because there's so many TEDx's that come out. That's also a credibility piece. Yeah.
Okay. So then we talked about the CPOP. We talked about a lot of things. So how else, if I'm a small business owner, how else do I go about building my own credibility? I may not be able to get on the TED stage. I probably should write a book, but maybe I'm not there yet. What other things should I be doing to raise my credibility for the people I network with, my customers, things like that?
Well, at first, if you don't mind, Mitch, let's define what credibility is.
Good.
Because you're making an assumption of what it is.
Right. Of course.
And your assumption is the same that everyone else's has. That is, how do I do this one thing so I'm looked at in the minds of other people as being credible? That is not what credibility is. That's a part of it.
Good. I'm glad you're bringing that up.
Credibility is the quality. It's 3 elements that came out. It's the quality that you're trusted, known, and liked.
Okay.
So we know the phrase know, like, trust. what has to happen, and I'll just be really quick. You're starting a new business or you have an ongoing business, somebody lands on your webpage or they
Okay.
land on your social media. You've got 3 to 5 seconds, or maybe you have the 8-second attention span. You have 8 seconds to capture their attention, to show that you are trustworthy enough that they want to spend more time to get to know you.
Right. Which is
Right.
hard
So
to
that-
do on an electronic platform. You're not in front of them.
Exactly. So
Right.
you have 8.25 seconds, one human attention span to generate enough trust that they want to get to know you. As they get to know you, then you're building on the trust, you're building on getting to know you, you're building on them getting to like you.
Right. They've
So
opened up.
maybe you have
they're
another
listening now.
minute or two after that, right?
Right.
So we don't think about it that way. We don't, like, for instance, when I get to a web page and it says as seen on and it shows all these things, I often run away because I for some odd reason I just find
Turns you
some
off?
of that stuff dubious.
Yeah.
It just turns me off, right?
Right.
So what really happens is, let's go back. You and I have spoke before. I liked you. You invited me onto your show.
Right.
The first thing I did as I'm waking up is my stall tactic was, tell me about the clients that you're attracted to, that want
Right.
to work with you. And as I'm listening to you, you're speaking from your heart. You weren't doing a marketing cookie cutter approach.
No, I didn't
You were
pull my
telling
ideal
me-
client profile and read it to you.
Yeah, exactly. You were talking on who you liked working with. I asked 1 or 2 questions. I got a feeling of what it would feel like if I was your prospect and you were talking to me.
Right.
What I was really doing is getting to know you and decide if I like you a little bit better.
Right.
You were building up your credibility for me. And so if for those entrepreneurs, first, if you want to be more credible, I'm going to encourage you, watch the TEDx. There are 10 values of credibility. The under being trustworthy, probably the most, I mean, we know authenticity, vulnerability. We know
Yeah, because people see through
integrity.
you. Right. But that's easier if you're talking to me like you did here. How do you do that on a web page, on your homepage? How do you do that?
Oh, well, so it's very fascinating.
Put a video?
We could spend an entire conversation doing that. The easiest way, though, the absolute easiest way, is that if I land on your webpage or if I land on your social media and see you,
Yeah.
that you're consistent from one social media to the other,
Okay.
and I get to see your CPOP.
Okay.
I want to see immediately what playground you play. So if I
Becomes like a
wanna build-
tagline almost.
it's, that's the thing. It's almost a tagline. I almost want to say yes,
Yeah.
but it typically goes in the place where the tagline would go.
Right.
Taglines are marketing. Taglines
Right,
typically
exactly.
have
It's not a
I,
tag.
we, they have serve, they have other things,
Right.
right? And so what I'll say is, yeah, yes, and
Right.
but it's where the tagline goes, because if I get to your webpage and it's a jumbled mess, that you have that person who speaks 3 minutes in a 30-second pitch, if it looks like that, I'm running away, because why
Yeah,
would
of
I want to
course.
spend time
You
knowing you?
lose interest.
If it's short, if it's focused, if I'm looking for, once again, we'll talk about you or talk about you. If you're looking for somebody to help you understand what credibility is, you're going to get to one of my web pages and then you go, well, that's interesting. To me, I think credibility are books. So let's talk about books. You can get to a page where I talk about books. I think credibility means that my employees have much higher employee engagement. I don't have a web page for that, right? So by the way, as I'm speaking, I'm realizing I need to do SEO for the types of services I deploy, so that I
Right.
can make it easy, if you're coming to me for, in this case, operational credibility,
Uh-huh.
that I actually have pages on each level of operational credibility that we focus on. So at the moment, I think my web presence is probably partially credible, right? And so you're
Okay.
asking me, you wouldn't be offended when you go there, but if you had a particular focus on an area that I don't list on the web page, you may go to somebody else.
Well, of course, right, because doesn't
Right.
resonate with you, you don't relate to it.
So on web pages, on social media, you want to make it easy for them to see the playground you play in.
Right.
You particularly on either the homepage or certainly in social media,
Yeah.
you want to have video testimonials
Okay.
of
Yeah. I
people who
meant
are
that
giving
before.
you
So video is important,
testimonials.
right?
Yeah, well,
Right.
that is other people sharing cred dust about you.
Right.
And sometimes they're not going to listen to all the testimonials, but they're going to listen or read some of them,
Right.
right? And it's, you want to make sure, I think the way to think about it is, credibility for me is that PhD in the School of Hard Knocks that you've received, and that has more weight to it. After interviewing the 500 people, it has more weight to it than just the degrees you hang on the wall.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And I guess you shouldn't try and be everything to everybody. That's the mistake a lot of people make. They think like everybody, if you don't niche down and be specific of what you do, you actually lose business. You
So
lose
let me give you the
credibility because nobody's a
so
generalist. Nobody believes you could be a generalist.
oh, that's exactly the case, right? And so remember, we want to trust, know, and like. Under trust, I'm going to say the most important thing is being coachable.
Right.
And you could show that you're coachable, at least in a conversation. You may not be able to show that originally on the webpage, but what you could show under being known, you want to demonstrate that you're a servant leader. Being
Okay.
of service to others and is one of the most important things that just people don't do a good job of. And this doesn't mean
Communicating.
writing in your webpage, I serve, right?
Right.
Or we serve, right? And then what people often forget, what's really important, is being likable.
Yeah.
So it's showing respect. If you look at the logs, I was sitting here 7 minutes early. Normally I come about 10 minutes early, but it's early. I was waking up, right? I came early, even though, we weren't necessarily recording live. Because
Right.
to me, that's showing respect. The other thing that I've done during this interview is I named other people. So I'm spreading cred dust. I'm spreading the
Right. Of
ideas,
course.
thoughts, and actions
Yeah, I
of
like that.
others.
I like that term because then you support other people. They support you. It's a good.
Well,
it's a
you
good
want
thing.
to, the thing that's very fascinating is if hitting on what you just said about, you can't do everything.
Right.
So let's say somebody comes to you and it really requires where you have expertise and where you could do it, but you're not great. So what you do is, by the way, I have a partner who does this other thing. Why don't we come in together?
Right. That raises your credibility. When you try to be everything to everybody, it
Absolutely.
reduces your credibility because nobody buys into it. Nobody believes that you can be that as an attorney, like you can't really be a generalist as a lawyer anymore. You can't. There's too much stuff to know in too many areas. This isn't 1874. Nobody believes it. And you're like, oh, yeah, I can do that. Well, maybe you can figure it out, but maybe it's not the right thing to do. And you're just going to lose all your credibility with this person who won't refer you later on because they weren't impressed with the work you did. But I know we can go on and on and on all day because I love it. And it's one of my pet peeves when I go somewhere and I just listen to somebody and be like, boy, they need a lot. Nobody in this room knows what they just said. And I know what they do for a living, So the book is Being Seen and Being Heard as a Thought Leader, Credibility Nation, Mitchell, the great first name. And I appreciate coming on. So what's the best way for people to interact with you and learn from you?
So I am on LinkedIn. It's Mitchell Levy. I also have a webpage, mitchellevy.com. And one of the areas that you can link to is once a quarter, we run what's called the Ultimate Credibility Bootcamp.
Okay.
So what's amazing about that is you're going to go through the CPOP course, which is an hour and helps you articulate, never actually be that person who takes more than 30 seconds. As a matter of fact, if you do it right, you think about it as you're doing something in less than 8 seconds, and then you have the minute to tell you more if you have that time, right?
Right.
And then we help people align themselves on and offline. So mitchellevy.com, either connect to me at Mitchell Levy on LinkedIn or go to mitchellevy.com, and then you could book time on the calendar and find other areas in terms of services we offer.
We'll put all those links in the show notes, and I can't thank you enough for spending time with me today.
Mitch, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.